The scent of lavender and warm yeast hung in the air, perfect and heavy. My bakery, the Gilded Crumb, was finally open. I had spent 6 months curating every detail, from the reclaimed oak bar to the jazz playlist humming softly in the background. It was a masterpiece of atmosphere, and in the center of it all sat the VIP table. It was the best seat in the house, draped in linen, set with my finest crystal, and marked with a small, elegant sign reserved for family. It was 8 p.m. The table was empty. My phone buzzed in my apron pocket. I pulled it out, expecting an apology text. Maybe traffic was a nightmare. Instead, Instagram refreshed. Alexander, my brother, had just posted a selfie. He was holding a pint of cheap beer, grinning widely with my parents, Robert and Elizabeth, squeezed into the frame behind him. The background wasn't traffic. It was the neon-lit interior of a generic sports bar. The caption read, "Real moves happen here. Big things coming soon." I stared at the screen. The contrast was sharp enough to cut. Here I had built a sanctuary of elegance and flavor. There they were, celebrating mediocrity under fluorescent lights. They weren't late. They weren't lost. They had chosen not to come. The realization didn't land with a thud of sadness. It landed with the click of a lock turning. Drop a comment and let me know where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. I'd love to know who's part of our community. My eyes stayed dry. A baker knows that excess moisture ruins a crust, and tonight required absolute precision. I walked over to the VIP table, picked up the reserved sign, and snapped it cleanly in half. The sound was small, but it felt like a gunshot. Scanning the room, I spotted a young couple waiting by the door, looking hopeful. I waved them over. "This table is open," I said, my voice steady. "It has the best view in the house." As they sat down, looking delighted, I pulled out my phone one last time. I didn't open Instagram. I opened my messages. I typed one sentence to my father. "Table is open to paying customers. Don't bother coming." Then I put the phone on silent and returned to the kitchen. For the rest of the night, I didn't think about them. I thought about the dough. I thought about the temperature of the ovens. I thought about the smile on a customer's face when they bit into a fresh pain au chocolat. I focused on the work. That was the thing my family never understood. They saw the Gilded Crumb as a cute little hobby, something I did while Alexander was busy being a visionary. But this wasn't a hobby. This was 15 years of 4A. Wake-up calls. It was burns on my arms and flour in my lungs. It was missing every single family vacation because I was working double shifts at a commercial bakery to save every penny. Alexander had never worked a double shift in his life. He was always ideating. He was always networking. He was the golden boy with the big dreams and the empty bank account, and I was the safety net. I was the one who paid for his website hosting when he forgot. I was the one who bought him groceries when his capital was tied up. I was the one who listened to his pitches for hours, nodding and smiling, while my own dreams gathered dust. My parents enabled him, of course. They called him a genius. They called me reliable. "Morgan is so steady," my mother would say, as if steadiness was a consolation prize for being boring. They didn't see the fire it took to be steady. They didn't see the grit it took to save $50,000 on a baker's wage. They just saw a bank account they could tap when Alexander's latest venture inevitably crashed. But tonight the bank was closed. Tonight I wasn't the backup plan. I was the main event. And they had missed it. By midnight, the bakery was empty. The staff had gone home. I locked the front door and turned off the lights. In the silence, I checked my phone. 19 missed calls, 14 texts, all from my father. I didn't read them. I just stared at the screen, feeling the weight of the silence. It wasn't lonely. It was peaceful. For the first time in my life, I wasn't waiting for them to validate me. I had validated myself, and that was a dangerous thing for a scapegoat to do. The next morning, the bell above the door chimed. I didn't need to look up to know who it was. The heavy, authoritative footsteps gave him away. My father, Robert, strode in like he owned the place. He was wearing his business casual polo shirt, the uniform he wore when he wanted to look important without actually doing any work. He didn't look at the pastries. He didn't look at the decor. He looked straight at me, his eyes scanning for weakness. "Rough night?" he asked, leaning against the counter. "Saw you were still here late." "I was working," I said, wiping down the espresso machine. "Something you should try sometime." He laughed, a dismissive huff of air. "Always with the attitude, Morgan. Look about last night. We didn't mean to miss the opening, but Alexander had a huge opportunity. Some angel investors were at that bar. We had to support him. It was networking." "Networking at a sports bar during the playoffs?" I said flatly. "Sounds productive." "It was strategic," he snapped. "Alexander is building something big. an app that's going to revolutionize the gig economy. But to get to the next level, he needs capital. Serious capital. He paused, waiting for me to ask how much. I didn't. I just kept cleaning. Morgan, listen, he continued, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. We've been talking. Your bakery is doing well, clearly, but it's small potatoes compared to what Alexander is building. We think it's time you diversified. We need you to invest $50,000 in his company. Ground floor. Equity stake. I stopped wiping. $50,000. It's a loan, essentially, he said quickly, but think of it as an investment in the family. We supported you when you were just playing with flour in the kitchen. Now it's your turn to support your brother. I looked at him, really looked at him, and for the first time I saw the fear behind his eyes. He wasn't asking for help. He was demanding tribute. And then it hit me, the psychology of it all. It wasn't just greed. It was the crab bucket reality. If one crab tries to climb out, the others pull it back down. My success wasn't a point of pride for him. It was a threat. My bakery, my independence, my competence, it all highlighted Alexander's failure. If I succeeded on my own terms, it proved that their golden boy was just a shiny object with no substance. To maintain the family myth, they had to drag me back down to their level. They needed my money not just to save Alexander, but to sabotage me. No, I said. Excuse me. No, I repeated, my voice calm. I'm not investing. And I'm not lending. The bank is closed, Dad. His face darkened. The mask of the concerned father slipped, revealing the bully underneath. You owe us, Morgan. We raised you. We fed you. We tolerated this little hobby of yours. Don't be selfish. Selfish, I laughed, a harsh sound that surprised us both. Selfish is skipping your daughter's grand opening to drink beer with your son. Selfish is asking for $50,000 the morning after you humiliated me. I'm done, Dad. Get out. He didn't move. He stood there red-faced and sputtering like an engine failing to turn over. You can't talk to me like that. I'm your father. And I'm the owner of this establishment, I countered, walking around the counter to face him. And you are trespassing. Trespassing? He laughed, but it was thin and nervous. This is a family business. We helped you get here. Helped, I pulled a small notebook from my apron pocket. It wasn't a prop. It was my ledger. I opened it to the first page. Let's review the help, shall we? 2015. I asked for a cosigner on a small business loan. You said no because it would tie up your credit for Alexander's car. 2018, I needed help moving into my first commercial kitchen. You were busy helping Alexander move into his third failed startup office. 2020, I asked to borrow $500 for a mixer. You laughed and told me to get a real job. I snapped the book shut. The only thing you contributed to this bakery was the motivation to never need you again. Stop keeping score, he growled, stepping closer, trying to use his physical size to intimidate me. It had worked when I was 12. It didn't work now. I'm not keeping score, I said, my voice dropping to a register that was dangerously calm. I'm checking the receipts. And you're overdrawn. I took a breath, centering myself. This was it. The moment I had rehearsed in my head 1,000 times, but never thought I'd have the courage to execute. Listen to me carefully, Robert. Access to my life is not a birthright. It's a privilege. And access to my table, that requires payment. Not money, respect, support, decency. You stopped paying that rent decades ago. You don't get to live in my house for free anymore. You are evicted. He stared at me, his mouth opening and closing. He looked small. Suddenly, the towering figure of my childhood was just an angry, entitled old man in a polo shirt. You'll regret this, he hissed. When you fail, and you will fail without us, don't come crawling back. I won't, I said. Now leave, before I call the police and have you removed like any other unruly customer. I walked to the door and held it open. The morning sun was bright and harsh outside. He hesitated, looking for one last jagged word to throw at me, one last hook to sink in. But he found nothing. My face was a wall. He stormed out, muttering curses under his breath. The door slammed shut and I locked it. I flipped the sign to closed. Then I leaned my forehead against the cool glass and breathed. My hands weren't shaking. My heart wasn't racing. I felt lighter. The air in the bakery felt cleaner, as if a heavy, suffocating smog had finally cleared. I had done it. I had fired my father. But as I turned back to my kitchen, I knew it wasn't over. Men like Robert didn't just walk away. They retaliated. And Alexander, desperate and cornered, would be right behind him. I needed to be ready. This wasn't just a disagreement. It was a siege. 2 days later, the bakery was humming. The morning rush had been steady suits, grabbing espresso students lingering over croissants. The rhythm was soothing, until the door opened at 12:15 p.m. And the atmosphere curdled. It wasn't a customer. It was a man in a beige windbreaker holding a clipboard. He flashed a badge. Health Department. We received a complaint. The cafe went silent. A woman mid-bite of a lemon tart froze. The espresso machine hissed loudly in the quiet. A complaint. I wiped my hands on my apron, keeping my face neutral. Regarding what? Rodent infestation, he said, his voice carrying to the back tables. Specifically rats in the food preparation area. I saw customers exchange glances. One couple stood up, leaving their half-eaten pastries. Humiliation burned hot in my chest, but I swallowed it down. That is absolutely false. My kitchen is spotless. You're welcome to inspect it right now. He did. For 45 minutes, he tore my kitchen apart. He checked the traps empty. He checked the droppings logs pristine. He checked the flour bins, the refrigerator, seals the space behind the ovens. My staff stood by, terrified and silent. I stood with my arms crossed, watching him fail to find a single violation. Finally, he clicked his pen and sighed. Well, Miss Bennett, it looks like a false alarm. Your facility is one of the cleanest I've seen all month. Who called it in? I asked, my voice tight. I can't disclose that, he said, handing me a copy of the report. But I will say this, the caller claimed to be a concerned relative who had seen the infestation personally. A relative. I walked him to the door, forcing a smile for the remaining customers. Everything is perfect, folks. Just a routine checkup. But as soon as he left, the smile dropped. They weren't just greedy. They weren't just jealous. They were at war. This wasn't about money anymore. This was scorched earth. They were willing to burn my livelihood to the ground, to destroy the reputation I had built over a decade, just to force me into submission. They wanted me desperate. They wanted me broken, so I would crawl back to them and sign whatever checks they put in front of me. I went into the back office and pulled up the security footage from the front door. I rewound to yesterday afternoon. Sure enough, there was Alexander's car idling across the street for 20 minutes, casing the joint, watching the lunch rush, counting the customers he was trying to drive away. My hands shook not with fear, but with a cold, focused rage. They had crossed a line. You don't mess with a chef's kitchen. You don't mess with their hygiene rating. That is a declaration of nuclear war. I picked up my phone. I didn't call my father. I didn't call Alexander. I called the non-emergency police line. Because filing a false report with a government agency isn't just a prank. It's a crime. And I was done playing family. It was time to start playing prosecutor. The rage was still simmering, a low boil in my gut, when a knock came at the back door late that night. It was tentative, almost timid, nothing like my father's arrogant pounding. I checked the security feed. It was Kayla Alexander's fiancé. She looked like a ghost, pale and shivering in the alleyway light. I unlocked the door but didn't open it fully. What do you want, Kayla? I need to show you something, she whispered, her voice trembling. Please. I can't go to the police yet. I'm scared. I stepped aside. She stumbled in, clutching her phone like a lifeline. She didn't look like the polished partner of a tech visionary. She looked like a woman who had just realized she was living with a stranger. She sat at the prep table, her hands shaking so hard she could barely unlock her screen. Alexander isn't building an app, she said the words, spilling out in a rush. There is no company. There never was. I figured, I said dryly. But that doesn't explain the health inspector. It's worse than that. She pulled up a voice memo. He owes money. A lot of money. To bad people. The investors at the sports bar, they were bookies. He's in for $80,000. $80,000. My stomach turned. That explained the desperation. That explained the $50,000 demand. It wasn't investment capital. It was ransom money. Listen to this, she said, pressing play. The recording was grainy, but the voices were unmistakable. My father and Alexander arguing in hushed tones. She's not budging, Dad. The health inspection didn't scare her enough. That was Alexander sounding frantic. She'll break, my father's voice, calm and chilling. We just need her to sign the initial partnership agreement. Once we have her signature, we use the power of attorney clause on page 12. It gives us liquidity rights. And then what? And then we liquidate, my father said. We sell the ovens. We sell the mixers. We sublease the space. We strip it for parts. That bakery is worth at least $100,000 in assets. That covers your debt and leaves a nice profit for my trouble. But that destroys her business. She'll have nothing. She's resilient, my father scoffed. She's always been good at starting over. Besides, she's just a baker. She can always get a job at a grocery store. The recording ended. The silence in the kitchen was heavy, suffocating. I stared at the stainless steel counters, the convection ovens, the proofing racks. They weren't just planning to steal my money. They were planning to butcher my life's work. They were going to carve it up and sell it for scrap to pay for Alexander's mistakes. And then the realization hit me, the golden child paradox. Alexander wasn't the successful one. He wasn't the genius. He was a parasite. He created nothing. He only consumed. I was the host. I was the one with real value, real assets, real skill. The entire family dynamic was a lie designed to hide the fact that their golden child was an empty shell funded by the labor of the scapegoat. "Why are you showing me this?" I asked, looking up at Kayla. "Because I'm pregnant," she whispered, touching her stomach. "And I won't raise a child in a family that eats its own." She forwarded the file to my phone. "Do whatever you have to do, Morgan. Burn them down." I looked at my phone. The file was small, just a few megabytes, but it was a nuclear weapon. "Go stay with your sister tonight," I told her. "Do not go back to Alexander." After she left, I played the recording one more time. "She's just a baker." I smiled. It was a cold, terrifying expression that I didn't recognize in the reflection of the oven door. "You're right, Dad," I whispered to the empty room. "I am a baker, and tomorrow I'm going to serve you exactly what you ordered." The next morning they arrived at 10 a.m. sharp. My father and Alexander both looking smug, both carrying briefcases that looked more like props than business tools. They expected a broken woman. They expected a desperate baker ready to sign anything to save her rodent-infested reputation. I unlocked the door and let them in. "You're early," I said, my voice flat. "We wanted to help you resolve this quickly," Robert said, placing a thick stack of papers on the counter. "The health inspection was unfortunate, but with this partnership we can rebrand. Fresh start." Alexander was already looking around, eyeing the espresso machine like he was calculating its resale value. "Sign here," he said, tapping the document. "And here. We'll handle the rest." I picked up the pen. I looked at them, my father, who had never paid a bill he didn't complain about, and my brother, who had gambled away his future and tried to steal mine. "You're right," I said. "We need to handle this." I didn't sign the paper. Instead, I pressed a button on my phone, which was connected to the bakery's sound system. Alexander's frantic voice filled the room, booming from the high-quality speakers. "She's not budging, Dad. We strip it for parts. She's just a baker." The color drained from Alexander's face so fast, he looked like he might faint. Robert froze his hand halfway to the papers. The recording played on detailing every part of their plan, every ounce of their contempt. When it finished, the silence was absolute. "You recorded us," Robert whispered, his voice trembling. "Kayla recorded you," I corrected, "and she gave it to me." I reached under the counter and pulled out a manila envelope. "This isn't a partnership agreement. Inside you'll find two things. First, a restraining order for both of you, barring you from coming within 500 feet of this bakery or my home. Second, a copy of the police report I filed this morning regarding the false health department tip. Filing a false report is a misdemeanor, but conspiring to defraud a business owner using power of attorney, that's fraud. That's a felony." Alexander started to hyperventilate. "Morgan, please. It was just talk. We were just—" "Save it for the judge," I said. "The police have the audio file. They have the text logs. They have everything." I walked to the door and opened it wide. "Get out, and don't ever come back." They left. They didn't argue. They didn't threaten. They ran. They ran like the cowards. They were fleeing the light they had tried so hard to extinguish. 1 month later, the bakery was fuller than it had ever been. The morning light streamed through the windows, catching the dust motes dancing in the air. The reserved sign was gone forever. Every table was open. Every seat was filled. I was behind the counter boxing up a dozen croissants when I saw it. A customer had left a $20 bill on the counter, but under it was a napkin with a note. It wasn't just any customer. It was the city's most notorious food critic, a man known for destroying restaurants with a single sentence. I picked up the napkin. Scrawled in blue ink were 5 words: "Integrity tastes better than anything." Next to it, a check for $2,500. A tip. I looked up, but he was gone. I looked around at my staff, my lead baker laughing with a regular, my barista perfecting a latte art heart. This was it. This was the family I had built. Not from blood, but from flour, sugar, and mutual respect. I hadn't lost a family. I had gained my freedom. If you've ever had to build your own table because your family wouldn't give you a seat, share this story. You are not alone.